Your social media strategy is incomplete if you're not thinking about these two types of people. There are the people who are sitting on their couch consuming long form video, and then there are the people who are grabbing their phone in transit and they're just clicking through their stories. You need to delight really, really quickly to capture their attention because they're moving so much faster. You're missing 50% of your audience if you're not doing both.
It's so funny. I met you, like 10 minutes ago? And like, wait, I feel like we've been friends like for a while.
We definitely
That's how your company's kind of like making a lot of sense to me. Be happy we talked about it. Your neck was so gorgeous, though. Like, it's funny how it look good with every outfit.
Wait, one, it does. Two, I have the best story about it because my best friend actually just started making these, and she's a stylist on I Have This Friend. And we met working when we were both starting at Meta. And so she's not a stylist by trade, but like she had the best taste in the world. I've always been like, Jessie, you have to do something like in fashion or in jewelry or whatever it is. And she started when I started I Have This Friend, she started styling and she was doing bridal styling. And with the money that she made on I Have This Friend, she started this jewelry brand.
That's unreal. Oh, and she does like say, okay, well, I've been looking for a stylist, so maybe I want to do it.
She's the best.
Oh dear God. Okay, well, let's get into it. What actually inspired you and your childhood best friend to actually start this company?
Oh my gosh. There are so many different things that happened that led to the beginning of I Have This Friend. But I think you even talked about it right in the beginning of our conversation. Both of us have a million friends. Like we just have always been those connector people who love to connect with people, love to bring people together. And we found ourselves always saying, I have this friend who's really great at this. Let me get you connected with them. Like, if you told me you knew this stylist, I'd be like, you have to talk to my friend Jessie. And so it happened over and over and over again. And at the time I was working at Meta, it was still Instagram, Facebook back in the day, but I was known amongst my friends as the friend that worked at Instagram. And so people would always come to me and be like, hey, I've been working under an interior designer for a few years and I really want to break off and build my own business. How do I do it on Instagram? Or the same for a friend who was working in fashion or a friend who loved professional organizing on the side. And I would always say the same thing to them, which was content. Like you have to really be consistent. You have to post frequently. You have to have a brand voice that resonates with the people you're looking to grow into. And they would look at me with fear in their eyes and be like, I'm not a content creator. I'm not an influencer. I want nothing to do with that. That's not my skill set. I'm good at design. I'm good at style. I'm good at professional organizing. Is there any other way? And I couldn't think of a good way. And so it got to the point where I called Ingrid and I was like, who's my best friend and now co-founder. And it was like, Ingrid, there's a pattern here. There are so many people who are so good at what they do, our friends, and they're looking to own their businesses and grow the things that they're really good at and passionate about. But there's no way for them to do it unless they're content creators. And so she kind of jumped out of her chair and was like, wait, I've been working in the kitchen at she was working at 11 Madison Park at the time. I've been looking at working in the kitchen with these chefs who are the best of the best at what they do, but they're essentially making minimum wage because that's just I mean, that's the nature of when you're a line chef and you're building your career on the line, you make less money than you will when you're really well established. And so she would do dinner parties in her New York City apartment with these chefs from 11 Madison Park. I know.
I was sad to be invited to one of these dinner parties.
It was incredible. It was the best moment of the month. And it was $100 a head instead of $600 a head. And
The chefs try to keep a lot more of the money.
the chefs keep a lot more of the money. They were making money on the side. And it got to the point where she was like, this should be an opportunity for everyone. And so when I called her and I was like, there should be a platform for people who are like our friends who are hustling and building up their businesses to connect with people like us who would love to use their services, it was just clear to us that it was time to build something like that. And that was I Have This Friend.
That's incredible because I feel like oftentimes you'll have this problem that you feel like is really urgently needing to solve. And that's how every good business is formed. It starts with a problem, it doesn't start with a solution, right? But then getting to the right solution is oftentimes not obvious. I would have never thought the way that you help people get out of their fear of content creation is create this platform, this marketplace that connects people. Was that obvious to you? Did you lead up to it through, like, iterations?
For me, I understood what their passion was. I was like, they're really good at styling, or in Jessie's case, she's really good at helping me pack for my trips. And I would look at her and I'd be like, I would love to pay you for this. People would pay you for this. But she didn't think it was something that she could monetize or even turn into a career. And so that was where I was like, there are content creators who are amazing at producing content and being in front of the camera and not as one skill set. And then there are service providers who are brilliant at what they do, not necessarily as comfortable in front of the camera. There are some who are both, which is fantastic. But why should they be required to be one thing if they're really passionate about doing something else?
I will say also, even if you are someone who's really good at both, doing 2 things is a great way to be zero sum because you're not gonna really be able to be exceptional at any of them. You have no idea how many people have come up to me and proposed all these insane businesses I can and start to leverage the entry audience.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, then who's gonna run the content? Like, I do that all day. The reason why it's an insanely large audience that's engaged and captivated is because I spend my entire week becoming better at that scale and then putting out content. I have, like, 0 extra time. And then I think a lot of people get trapped in the, like, opportunity all these millions of opportunities, and they end up doing all these multiple things, but what happens is everything actually gets compromised at the end. So I really, really think it's so cool that you're actually getting these people who are experts at what they do, be more of an expert at what they do rather than take them away from their craft and to, like, force them to do something that is not actually what they're monetizing and what they're actually good at.
Exactly. Like, it's so important to focus on your superpower and hone in on those skills because that's how you drive the most value. That's how you really change the world. And that was for all of the talent on I Have This Friend. That's what they're doing is they're building their businesses. And for Ingrid and I starting I Have This Friend, our superpower is connecting people. So that's exactly what we're meant to be doing what we're doing.
Oh my god, obsessed with the superpower analogy. I 100% believe there's only one way to be exceptional. It's like find your superpower, then just go 110% on that one thing. Like literally don't do anything else. You could like I always say, like it could be as ridiculous as juggling. Who cares if you're the best in the world or you're telling me you're not gonna make a shit ton of money from it? Like you will. You know what I mean? And you're like literally giving this opportunity to all these people on your platform. Which is so awesome. How did the name come up to be?
Okay. So, I mean, naturally, we would always say, I have this friend who's really great at this. You should talk to them. Or I have that friend who designed their house in the most beautiful way. You should check it out. But um, this is a story that I haven't actually shared before. I've been sometimes I'm embarrassed by it, but I think it's really I'm in this coaching group and with other female founders, and everyone this week was like, you need to share this story because it's hilarious. So I was traveling a lot for work when I was working at Meta, and I was on a flight from San Francisco to Chicago, and I decided to turn on the live action Aladdin movie. And there's a scene
Which I love, by the way. I love that movie.
it was amazing.
It was really good.
It was really good, and there was a scene, uh, where the genie is singing, like, "You'll never have a friend like me," and I just had this moment where it clicked, and I was like, "Wait a second. A friend like me, like, I have this friend. There are people who are so good at what they do, and they're my friends, and I wanna connect them with other people, like, you'll never have a friend like that." And so that was kind of the origin of I Have This Friend.
That's such a good story because, like, the ultimate concept of scaling friends is, like, paradoxical. It's, like, the one thing that has to stay in this quality, intimate circle, but it's also the one thing that everyone wants. It's you've figured out a way to kind of maintain that community feeling of, "Oh, this is, like, an actual recommendation to someone I trust," versus, "Hey, I'm, like, just going through this, like, long directory of things and it feels impersonal." Like, I've used your platform and I really feel that sense of I'm scrolling a small list of very curated recommendations. I don't feel like I'm, like, scrolling through hundreds of pages of Yelp, which, yeah, like, I'm not gonna feel like that's not saving me time. If I have to do my own research, then I might as well just go to Google at that point. Like, that is something that I think is, like, very, very cool about what you're building.
Yeah, yeah.
I will say though, like, the fact that you're watching a movie and, like, that spark is coming out, it's, like, true sign of obsession, And personally, I think people who are obsessed and, like, have the capability to be obsessed on one thing are really the ones who are gonna make it. Like, obsession is inherently a superpower in itself. So it's so funny because, like, if you didn't, like, absolutely love what you're doing, you were so passionate about it, in that moment, it just wouldn't have clicked for you. You wouldn't handle thinking about it that way.
It was like my mind was always kind of subconsciously building on the idea. And I actually one day I was scrolling through Instagram and this meme popped up that said, always live life in your side tabs. And that resonated with me so much because like I had my 9 to 5 and then I had all of my side tabs. And what was existing in my side tabs was I have this friend. And that's where like I'm on a plane and I'm watching a movie and I'm just thinking about it because that's where I'm obsessed. Exactly what you were saying.
Oh my god, I love that. And to be honest, like, quitting your job is also not something you do casually, like, again, like, it takes this, like, really big leap of faith, and you really have to have conviction and bet on yourself or whatever you're building. I love to ask the story of, like, wait, what was going on in your head at that time, because when I quit my job, I had, like, 0 direction or clarity, like, I was just like, "I just know I have to quit. I just know there's something bigger for me here, but I have no idea what that is." And so I'm curious, what did you have at that moment when you decided to quit?
Oh my gosh, a lot of anxiety.
That I can relate.
But no, I had a job that I loved, truly. Like I had so much fun. I loved my team. I there was something missing. And I felt like if I didn't chase it down, it was going to pass me by. And it felt like the right moment in time to do it. And I'm saying that without giving credit to the incredible manager that I had who pushed me in that direction, because I think had he not kind of unlocked this this track of had he not unlocked this track of thought of I can do something bigger, I can dream bigger, then I probably wouldn't have been in the position to quit in the first place. But how I felt was nervous and like I was ready for a new path. And what ultimately helped me take the leap, and I think what people really need to think about when they're looking to leave their job or take on something new and take a risk, is it's not necessarily the one thing. I knew about I have this friend. I was already obsessed with the idea, but the odds of I have this friend working, oof, the odds were stacked against me, let's be clear. And so it was more about jumping onto a new path and where that path was going to take me. That was the focus. And if I was ready to take that step and meet new people along the way and be on that journey that was going to take me in a completely different direction than the ladder that I was climbing, I was ready to leave. And so I think that's really important for people to think about is it's not necessarily the idea because the likelihood of the idea working out, I mean, you see how many startups come into the world and how many fail and obviously you want to be the successful one, but your first idea is going to evolve into something else that's going to evolve into something else and the people you meet along the way are going to change that for the better. And so if you're willing to commit to that, then it's worth taking.
Yeah, and it's gonna work out. Like, I love that how you talked about it because sometimes people will be like, "Well, I need to have this, like, genius idea, and then I'll quit, and then it makes sense." But it's like, well, that's never gonna work out because realistically, if you kind of jump on this idea prematurely without actually doing the work of vetting it and, like, seeing what it takes, at the end, you're actually gonna be very disappointed. You're probably gonna fail versus refocusing the narrative of, "Hey, something is bigger is here for me. I had something that I need to figure out," keeping it more vague and broad and knowing that, okay, it's really this leadership track that I'm trying to pursue or, like, this entrepreneurial track I'm trying to pursue. And then being open-minded of how that pans out is much better way to actually set yourself up for success, really, and it's probably not a good idea actually to quit your job unless you're kind of ready for that lane,
Yeah.
and, like, I think sometimes people will prematurely be like, "Well, I should quit my job for this idea." I think that's actually bad because you're going to probably get tired too soon and then kind of end up in a place where you feel like you made a bad decision and kinda get stuck in the in between. But I feel like something like that is not at all something that, like, I knew when I quit. I feel like it's like a very mature, actually thought out process. So can you actually walk me through the story of how your manager like opened that like framing for you? Because personally, like, I wish I had someone like that when I quit who could help me kind of like, think of it that way. So like from the beginning, I want to hear like everything he said, and maybe we all probably need this story in our lives right now.
He is truly the best. I will tell this story for the rest of my life because it changed my life. I was in walking into our first one-on-one. I had just moved to a new team. I was working at Meta. I had just moved to a new team, moved to a new city. I was in San Francisco, had moved from Austin, and the entire team was like 10, 12 years older than me. And so my manager, Juan, really took me under his wing and sat me down and was like, "Tell me about the next 5 years of your career, and then what do you see after that?" And I went up to the whiteboard and I started mapping it all out, and it was like, "First, I'm going to focus on the role that I'm in, and then I'm going to go to the next role and master that, and then from there, maybe I'll start to manage a team, maybe I'll go to business school, I'm not really sure. I've always kinda wanted to start something." And he stopped me. He was like, "Put the pen down. You are not thinking big enough. You are not dreaming big enough. You are putting yourself on a path to be in my role when you're 40, and you could be putting yourself on a path to be Mark Zuckerberg when you're 40." And I mean, do I want to be Mark Zuckerberg? That's a conversation for another time. But that completely changed the way that I thought about my career. And I think when you're young and when you're in your 20s and you're really, I mean, people pleasing even, you're trying to do the best at your job that you possibly can. And so you're so one track minded. But when you take a step back and see the forest for the trees, there's this moment of seeing the potential in front of you that you would have never even thought of if you were just thinking of your day to day.
100%. I've actually had a mentor similar like that for me in my life who it's oftentimes them just saying what you already know about yourself and then validating that inner voice that makes all the difference. If you don't actually believe you're capable of something bigger, someone telling you you're capable of something bigger, it's not going to resonate.
Yeah.
But if you are in isolation believing you're capable of something bigger and there's no one to validate that, you'll get that will stay as an inner voice. That will never pan out. And it's so critical that we have and find these people in our lives who are going to say what we're thinking to our face that actually gets us to revise to action. It's never the person you expect. It's not that executive at that top tech company. It's not your relative. It's not your best friend. It's always going to be the person you least expect. And I find it like so incredible that it happened for you at the company that you were gonna then eventually quit. Hey now to go do what he was talking to, which is insane. And it really speaks to like a great manager. And for everyone listening to this episode, don't expect your manager to be like, that's like rare. One in a billion for sure.
Yeah,
But I don't want to set those like day shift.
yeah, but I will say, seek those people out, the people who see your sparkle and maybe even see it more than you do in that moment. There are managers like him that can change your life because they're focused on the people that they're managing rather than the job that needs to be done. And so, whether you're just starting your first job or you're a manager yourself, thinking about it in the context of human to human and how can I help you as a person grow in your life and grow in your career rather than just like how can I help you hit your goal at work is just allows people to be so much more
Oh
successful.
my god, absolutely. And that's the other thing that you mentioned, right? It's like if that's not your manager, well, that person's not going to just like fall in your lap. You have to go find that person for you. And most of the time, we just don't know where we're going to find that person. So the only way that you can optimize for this person actually coming in your life is really just putting yourself out there, like having those conversations, seeking out mentorship, like finding your own role models, and they can literally just be people on the internet that you follow. It doesn't have to be I think a lot of the times people feel frustrated that, "Oh, I don't have that network or I'm not in those rooms." You can totally find these people online. Even if you don't have a direct relationship with them where they're telling you that, there's so many incredible, amazing women that I look up to who have never spoken to who deeply impact the way that I think about myself and what I think I'm capable of. So like they can do it, I could do it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think what it ends up being for you as a person completely depends on what you resonate with and kind of what you're pursuing. But you have to do the work to seek it out. Like it's not gonna land on your lap. And so I think that it's like so important to actually take in that plan, to take it that next step. I'm curious about what you think about this, but do you think it's important for everyone to take risks in their 20s? Like, do you think it's like critical rite of passage?
Your 20s are a very good time to take risks. And I'm going to go back to advice that I got when I was taking my risk, which is at any given point in your life, there's opportunity and there's obligation. And when you're in your 20s, obviously every everyone has things going on in their lives. So this is not a, a blanket statement for everyone, but there's opportunity and there's obligation, and when you're in your 20s, you don't necessarily own a house, you don't necessarily have kids, you don't necessarily have obligation and responsibility that you will have as your life goes on, and those things are great. Like, I strive to have kids and a house one day, but it also makes it so that you can be less risk averse. And so in that time when your obligation is kind of on the lower scale and your opportunities on the higher scale, take that risk because life changes and one day the way that you weigh those two things is going to be different. And it's not to say that it's impossible later on, but it's a really good opportunity now.
100%. And there's a reason why a lot of really great things are born out of risk, because risk is just another way to say you've created stakes in your life. You've made something urgent. You've added an obstacle that you need to now climb over. Well, if you don't have those stakes, if you don't have that obstacle, you're not going to climb it. What are you going to climb? So then how are you going to get to the other side and build something great? And you said it perfectly, right? Like at some point when we get older, many of us are going to want families. Many of us are going to want to buy a house. We're going to have a mortgage, huge financial responsibility, right? And I'm gonna say something kind of controversial now, but I think for women specifically, this is 1,000 times more important to take what you're saying seriously, because why should we have to pick between having a family and having a career?
Completely.
We can't change our fertility clock. Like, let's not try to change that. Instead, maybe let's have this conversation with ourselves. Maybe let's pursue this risk earlier in our lives so we can actually kind of hit that tipping point in career, really see through our dreams, and then not have to pick between that and starting family, and then also start a family.
Yeah.
I do believe in the concept of a tipping point where at some point in your career, when you hit that, even when you have these financial obligations, when you have whatever, people who depend on you, like a family, when you're riding the momentum of success of your career, you can do that much and more in a quarter of the time because you're kind of at the end of that. Like, you've kind of made it and people now respect you. You now have opportunities handed to you. You don't have to hustle for them. You don't have to beg for them. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. Right. And so this is a big, like, the reason that so many successful people are men and not women is not because women are less capable. It's because of the fact that we actually have to put time into building that family. The child only comes from us. He doesn't come from a man. Like, we're not gonna change that. There's no point trying to change that. Um, that's more of the fact that's, like, literally it's a math equation. It's like we literally have less hours in a day. So, why can't let us women not suppress our dreams or, like, say no, we're in our family. Let's instead just, like, think about it a little earlier. Take that risk in our 20s, push ourselves, and really it's everything you talk about, which is, like, seeking mentorship, taking that risk, quitting your job, believing yourself, and that is not something that's just gonna, like, blend there for you. You really have to, like, go really think outside of the box and figure out, like, how you're gonna create that space for yourself. So, I mean, your story is, like, so inspiring. Like, I love it. Um, I wanna also, like, kinda tap into your mindset more as a founder. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who start it right when they graduate, and they never actually understand what it's like to be a 9 to 5 employee. I'm sure a lot of people listening as well, maybe they're about to graduate, or maybe they, are in the thick of building a business and are thinking about what it would like to work at a startup or like a big company like Instagram or Meta per se. How do you think the mindset and like lifestyle really differs of like employee versus founder?
Oh, it's so different. And I think both are amazing in their own way. And I'm so glad that I had the time to learn from people who were further in their careers and in more of a corporate setting because it laid the foundations for me of what I could basically take notes. Here are the things that I really like about this. Here are the things that I really don't like about this. And then moving into being a founder, I was able to learn from the things that I did like and apply those to what I'm doing day to day and steer clear of the things that I didn't like. And that I think has made I have this friend as an organization, even though we're small, a lot stronger than it could have been otherwise.
Totally. What was that shift like in the beginning? Like, you just quit your job, you now have to build this company. There's probably shifts you had to make in your life. What were they?
Oh my gosh, yes. I went from having a full day. I would have calls all day long. I was traveling all the time. I knew exactly what I was doing on Wednesday if it were Monday or even honestly the Wednesday before.
Mm.
And when I left, I hadn't built I have this friend to the stage where like it was a functioning business and I couldn't possibly run both anymore because it was too much for me to try to do both. And so I left with the hope and the goal of turning it into something. And so that first day when I turned in my computer from Meta and I opened up my new computer and opened up my email, I was like, crickets. What do I do?
Right.
How do I structure my day? Who do I reach out to? Who should I have conversations with? Like, how am I supposed to set up our C corp? Like, there were so many things that I had to teach myself, and thankfully, I'm doing this with my best friend, and so the two of us have been able to lean on each other and kind of figure it out together. But our motto is everything is figure outable because that is hard to put. I was exactly. And in a corporate environment, it was more so like I had people showing me the way. I had resources to look into for anything I could have possibly needed, and which was amazing. But so is figuring it out on your own.
Right. Structure versus ambiguity, and then like trying to navigate that ambiguity. Okay, if someone comes up to you and says, I quit my job, I want to start a business, give me the top three steps to do, like what would you tell them?
Wow, good question. I would say have a very clear vision of what you want to do. And that doesn't mean pressure to make it happen, but it gives you a North Star to work backwards from. So we knew with I have this friend, our our vision was that everyone deserves to live their dream life. And whether it's the talent who are hustling to build up their careers, deserving to live out their dream career, or the clients who want to live like influencers that they see and celebrities that they see on social, but don't necessarily have access to or didn't necessarily have access to that prior. Like that was our goal. Okay, how are we going to make this happen? Do we need money? Do we need connections? Do we need let's just start having conversations. And so visions first, conversations second. Who do I know that can help me get to the next stage of where I'm trying to go? And so that was thinking about if there are any programs that offered legal aid to founders. There are, by the way, and we used USC's clinic and it was incredible. And I also know that you went to USC. So it was awesome. They helped us so much and it was all for free. And then other founders reaching out, not being afraid to reach out because people are so willing to help, and friends and family who are willing to give you advice because people love helping people who are trying to do something cool. Third, being okay with progress happening in different spurts because it feels really, really slow and like you're not moving quickly enough and you're not accomplishing your goals. And then suddenly something happens and it all moves really fast. And then you're playing catch up. And that's just the name of the game. And so becoming comfortable with that was something I needed to learn and that I wish I knew before.
I absolutely love that because I feel like saying something like, "Yeah, do your C corp and then start an email." Like that's just like sure, but that goes like that's 0.00001% of the way. That's not actually helpful starting business, and every business looks really differently. So I loved that you talked about those three main things. Vision is so critical because vision is very different than like solution. Saying something like, "I want everyone to live their dream life," keeps you really focused on What's your brand voice? What is the experience of the product? Who are the types of people you have those conversations with who are aligned with your mission? All of a sudden, all those things that become very confusing actually become very clear when you have vision. So starting with that, literally could not have given better advice. Like I thought that was so good. Um, did you bootstrap? Did you raise? And like how did you go from like this is a small business to like now I'm serving like all these clients?
Yeah, so we went through an accelerator program and ended up raising a pre-seed round, and from there, we've been able to get to a place where we're making money and almost profitable, and so my I think, like, my perspective on how to run your business and how to fund your business has changed a lot from when I first started, and I was like, "Goal is to raise money from venture capital," and then now I look at founders who bootstrapped entirely, and I'm like, "That's the goal, that is freaking awesome," and so, um, all to say that we are doing as much as we can to be able to have as much ownership and control over the decisions that we make as we grow, because it feels really good to be actually making money as a business rather than just having to ask for it.
100%. I feel that's can we always please normalize that bootstrap businesses are insanely sick. Like they just over glamorize venture capital, and no one's talking about how venture capital is actually a great way to not own your business and not actually make money at the end of grinding. Like 0.00001% of companies actually have big exits where the founder actually makes life-changing money. Most of the time, it'll be situations like raised $50 million, sold for 30 million. Guess what happens? That's like a decade of work that you put in for less than minimum wage, and you're ending at a debt.
You literally just I felt like a dagger in my soul when you said that sentence. You saw I saw
Real and real talked about it, and I did not know this growing up because I grew up in the Bay Area with that clamor. And I didn't do the math at like 16 years old. I don't understand venture capital math. I did that math like 6 months ago. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this. I built tech, I built products, I raised money from investors. I gave it all back when I had that realization. It was like an insta click and overnight returned the money because I was like, I'm signing up for a life of not only debt, but also bunch of people who have huge stakeholders in my business. They're gonna push me to build big and build fast because obviously that's how you get that financial exit. That's what makes them investing their money worth it. But then I would have to probably sacrifice a lot of my mission and what I care about and the life that I want to live in order to meet those needs. Like, what is the point of quitting my job to build a better life for myself if I can't even live that life? Yeah. So I really really appreciate you saying that bootstrap businesses are just like so amazing and are such a real pathway for people. People should seriously consider venture capital and not blindly go into it.
Yeah. And that's just like we got very lucky because we have amazing early stage investors. Like they're so supportive. They're the ones encouraging us to push to make decisions. I mean, this now sounds obvious, but like make decisions that positively impact the business in the way that we drive revenue that almost feels like bootstrapping, but with partners who have helped us get to the place that we are, that I don't necessarily know if we well, no, that's we could do it by ourselves, to be clear, but it's really nice to have people in your corner to help you.
100%. And I would say, like, at a pre-seed level, when it's mostly like strategics and friends and family, well, these are people like you've hand selected and they're not putting $10 million in your business where it's like all of a sudden this high pressure, high stakes scenario. Like you're there to support you.
Yeah,
And sometimes you need that initial capital to get off the ground depending on what your business is.
totally.
So I'm curious if there's like some sort of like rule or like some sort of like thing we should think about before we choose between venture capital and bootstrap. So like if a founder was listening to this and they're struggling to figure that out, like what would you tell them to help them make that decision?
I would say think about what you need to grow. And so if you're in a place where you have no ability to get to the next step without capital, you need capital. If you're in a place where you can hustle to sell your product and then make money off of that product and put it back into the business, then that's incredible and try bootstrapping. And there are lots of massive businesses that bootstrapped their way to profitability and then ended up raising to grow even more. And so I think about it now, and not to say I've been doing this for decades, like this is coming from the perspective of an early stage founder who's been in it for 2.5 years now. But um, I think about it as, can we do what we want to do without a big chunk of additional capital? And for me right now, the answer is yes, which is incredible. And we're making it happen. And then there might be a stage like, I don't know, months from now, year from now, who knows, where we're like, we have this really big next step to get to and we need capital for it. And then that's when you go and you look into raising a next round. And so that's at least how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I love that. It's really like, well, what do you need to grow? You don't raise it just for the sake of it. You raise it if there's literally no other path.
Yeah.
That going through that pathway. I mean, I totally agree with that. Also, like, how big is your exit, right? Like, if you're raising more than a potential exit could be, like, if you're going to venture capital, yeah, you have to do the homework of learning the VC math. I can't go into these things blind, right? You're not setting up yourself up for success.
It's going to be really, really big.
Yeah, doubling plus one to that. You mentioned you said the word conversations earlier. It was like literally like networking was like buzzing in my head. Um, do you believe that networking is critical for starting a business? And what part of it is like signal to like what part of it is like just like more noisy for your business than helpful? And how do you strategically pursue networking in a way that is actually advancing your business forward to like where it needs to go? And kind of conversations is really the same thing as networking. Is like, okay, you need to like find the people that will help you get your business to the next place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think networking is a skill and you touched on it, but it needs to be honed. Not networking with everyone because that's going to be a complete distraction and very noisy, but finding the people who you want to have in your corner because they either have experience that would be really helpful or are creative geniuses and you think that their ideas are incredible and you want to learn from them, or you think you can help them in ways that might then like become a symbiotic relationship. Then networking, for us it's everything because we run a marketplace, and so we're a network based business, and we've grown entirely organically through word of mouth. So it's conversations happening around the dinner table and connecting person to person. And I think there's a misconception that networking has to be centered around talking about work, and it doesn't. You can meet the most interesting people who end up being the most impactful in your life at the farmer's market. Having those conversations with people who are interesting and have the potential to see your sparkle, or you have the potential to help them see theirs, like, there's always magic there, and that comes back to the connections on I have this friend, why we're doing what we're doing. It's like connecting people makes magic.
The irony is that networking inherently means transactional.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm connecting with this person because they're gonna give me value. I'm gonna give them value. But ironically, the best networking is when it's least transactional because you're not going to pursue a relationship with someone and say, I need this thing from you when it's like very unlikely to work out versus you pursue a relationship purely non-transactional in a friendly way, actually build a relationship, and when you actually need something, they're gonna jump to them and be like, yes, I want to help you because you have that trust and that connection going forward. So it's just funny how like ironic that is that networking inherently is a transactional thing, but can only be developed non-transactionally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like, I mean, when you think of it as building your supportive net that is going to either save you or you're going to drop right through it. The strength of relationships comes from getting to know people. And it's not just, hi, my name is Emily and I'm a founder. I'm the founder of I Have This Friend. Let me tell you about it. Like, that's robotic and that doesn't resonate with people. But when you can connect person to person, like, that's when you build your stronger net.
What's your best networking story?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Best networking
Or the easiest networking story?
if that's even a day, we'll like about that for a second. I think, okay, so I always tie it back to like the the path that I have been on. And so when I was a new grad at Meta, and I was working in the Austin office, and I just wanted to meet more people on the global team in San Francisco office and LA office because I grew up in California and I wanted to eventually make my way back there. And everyone would come into town for South by Southwest. And so, you know what? I just changed my mind on the story that
But it's story. Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yes.
my craziest networking story is meeting my husband. Yes, it's so I can't believe that's not the first thing that came to my mind. You have to, but it's the most important, which is I married my client. And and it was crazy.
Wait, I'm so excited to hear.
It was my first job. I was living in Austin and I was working with small and medium businesses, helping them across that are paid and they're organic on Instagram and on Facebook. And my now husband was living in San Francisco working at at a startup at a tech company. And we would have meetings and were genuinely just friendly, like he was a really nice client. And he ended up looping his entire team into the fact that he thought he had a crush on the Facebook rep. And so they sent him to Austin for South by Southwest on a fake business trip to network
No.
and actually just for us to have lunch.
So good. That's crazy.
And so we had lunch and I was like, I was networking. I was like, what are you doing for South by Southwest? There are so many great activations. And he was on a fake business trip. So his team wasn't actually there yet. And he was like, oh, I'm not really sure yet. I'll probably walk around. And I was like, no, you have to come to this event and this event with me, thinking I was just, networking. And he ended up coming out with me and my friends and we really hit it off. And I waited until he was no longer my client for us to make it less professional, but yeah, that's networking led to meeting my husband.
And yeah, your life partner is clearly gonna have an insane impact on your business.
Oh yeah, and he's a founder too. So well, yeah, like a founder household.
Oh my god. My partner is also a founder, and people always say, don't date like two founders should not be together. And like financially, yes, it's like a little silly financially. But the bond that is created off of this bigger dream and the understanding the person has about you and what you're experiencing is unparalleled. Like, no relationship can ever be that connected when you're so fundamentally aligned on this dream that's so much bigger than you.
Yeah.
I feel like that is worth the, like, financial complexity.
Yeah, and that goes back to we're we're in our 20s. Actually, I just turned 30 last week, so I'm no longer in my 20s. But we both started our companies in our 20s because we were like opportunity, obligation, like now's the time, let's figure it out. And yeah, the empathy that we have for each other is unmatched for sure.
And believing in yourself is the main battle. I obviously know I would be super successful and I'm all the money in the world one day. Like, I already know. Like, it's impossible for me to achieve it if I don't first believe it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's kind of complex financially now for us, but we're obviously going to make it. And then all of that stuff's going to go away anyways.
Yeah.
And we're just going to build our future. But at least we'll be connected on like something that was more emotional when we were younger. And I find that relationship. My story is yet to be written. So we'll see.
Yeah, wait.
Also, I'm not going back to this episode later and being like, oh.
No, but it's the journey and it's the path. Like it's the same as building a company, building a relationship. Like you are learning so much, you're gaining so many data points that wherever it leads is better than you were before because you learned a lot from the process.
100%. And this is like a total rabbit hole if I need to go down it. How do you like see your life partner as a role they're playing in your life and your business? And I'm curious if this is like a new thought you had after meeting him or it's something you thought about before.
I met him way before I had the idea for I have this friend. But I will say what I noticed in him as we were getting to know each other was he encouraged me. He saw my sparkle. He encouraged me to think big, to dream big, to quit my job, to we're going to figure it out together and we're going to build this big dream life that we want because we can do it. And someone who thoughtfully enables you to be your best self is, in my opinion, the best partner you can have.
Yep, 100%. No, I totally agree. And I feel like at the end of the day, if your partner doesn't believe in you, it's kind of this unhealthy environment of like you're obviously having to believe in yourself against the friction. Yeah. Why would you do that to yourself? So it's like totally, I feel like main ingredient.
Red flag.
Yeah, like insta red flag. Um, I love that. You obviously have like a really big active social media presence for your company. Yeah, I'm sure is totally contributed to your success.
Yeah.
How did you build that? And how, I guess, how much of that, I guess, how much of your customers actually come from your social media?
Yeah. I mean, we have built this last year has been crazy. We've gone from having like a collective audience of 3,000 people to almost 200,000 people. And that is from sharing our story and sharing the story of the talent that we have featured on the platform and the authenticity around that. Like, it's all organic. And so I think so much of it has just been validation that our idea and our vision resonates with our community and allows us to build a really big, brilliant, tight-knit community, and as it continues to grow, then we start like, now that we have a more established audience, we can learn from our audience, which, I mean, we did from the beginning, but being able to see the patterns and the types of content that people like to see and the stories that they like to hear and the things that they most feel inspired by, that is what drives us to continue, like, either continue in the direction that we're going in or shift it based on what our community wants to see.
Social media is just such an artistic, creative force, and really nailing that is tapping into your like artistic side. But at the end of the day, the only way you're gonna figure out social is actually like through experimentation and like looking at the data and saying, okay, I tried this. Did it work or not? Let's look at the numbers. How many followers did I get? How many views? Blah blah blah, and then continue on that cycle.
Yeah.
So I love that you took that approach. I'm curious, like how you think about Instagram versus TikTok, and you could have 1,000,000 views on a video, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're gonna convert onto the platform.
Yeah.
So also, like, how do you see that?
So we you know what? We had a formula and then it changed. So I'll tell you about about how that happened, which was when we were getting started, what we noticed was we'd throw spaghetti at the wall on TikTok. Things would hit really hard on TikTok. And then as we got TikTok followers, we'd notice that people would just naturally go check us out on Instagram, follow us on Instagram, and then sign up for our newsletter. So the funnel was almost TikTok to Instagram to newsletter.
Guys,
And
interesting. It was so why do you think they did that?
I think that there's like you're captured. This is how it was working, and the caveat is that it has shifted, but they were captured on TikTok. They found out about us, they discovered us there, and then they wanted to learn more and go deeper. And so our portfolio essentially was like our grid on our Instagram, and they wanted to see more, and they wanted to hear our voices on our stories.
They wanted to see the actual clients, sorry, like, actually see what they could book.
Exactly.
Needed the visual.
They needed to learn more, and
It's almost like your conversion.
exactly. It's like you see the advertisement, let's say on TikTok, then you go and check out the storefront and that's our Instagram. And then from there, you're like, okay, I'm gonna go step inside the store and I'm gonna go shopping. And that's when they convert to our newsletter. And it's like,
So what's that?
yeah, that was really interesting. And then it started to shift. And I think it's probably like, I mean, the algorithm is the algorithm and it changes when it wants to change. And so, um, Reels, it's funny because Reels was born while I was still there and I was in the earliest tots and say that go. And what? So
Where that pushes all that
oh yeah, we can talk about that. But watching it mature as a product and then understanding the ways in which we're able to storytell and get in front of different types of audiences, that actually became an even bigger, like, top of the funnel moment for us than TikTok was, and it goes back and forth every once in a while, like, it's an art and a science, I would say, but they're all going to check out the newsletter now that we have a website, the website, so
Right. I mean, and newsletters your own audience, so you can really control the algorithm there and push and make sure that the people in newsletters see what you want them to see. Versus on Instagram, TikTok, you can't control who sees that. So I love that you're incorporating the newsletter in your funnel to actually nurture those leads, which is like I think really important for business owners.
yeah.
But I want to talk about the fact that you were at Meta when Reels was a thing. That's huge. So what's the secret? Tell us.
I mean, it was kind of like the way that people are, digesting content is changing, and we need to adjust to those changes, and TikTok was really starting to become very popular, and it was clear that people um, liked taking in content in that way, and um, so we ran tests, we encouraged our clients to test it out, and it clearly worked really well, so, I mean, I haven't been there in a few years, but, my friends who are still there, like, yeah, reels I mean, video content like that is fantastic.
I almost feel kind of early to the Reels meta. I know Reels have been around for so long, but I still feel there's so much room to grow and really utilize that to tap into your business. I do so much better on Reels than TikTok.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, my gut reaction is that a lot of the type of content I make is very much focused on like ambitious women who want to really drill down on like pursuing their careers aggressively and then doing things that are more fulfilling towards them, if that is entrepreneurship or not.
Yeah.
And I find that a lot of that type of a person is like often deleting TikTok from their phone because they don't want to get trapped in the doom scroll. But there is like less of a pattern or habit around deleting Instagram because it's kind of like where you talk to your friends.
That's so interesting.
This is a total guess. I really don't have any idea. I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the way that I behave and having, like, different formats to click into at different times, like,
Yeah.
the way that I'm digesting content when I'm sitting on the couch, like, relaxing on a weekend versus if I'm walking from, like, one meeting to another is totally different.
Can you tell me about that? I'm actually so curious.
Yeah. So, I mean, we would talk about this all the time. There's the content that you see when you're walking from point A to or in transit from point A to point B, and that's going to be volume off. You are not necessarily like people need to read something quickly. It's happening very, very fast. So you have to capture attention even quicker than you would with like more extended video content. And then in terms of, like, the more laid back sitting on my couch, having a Sunday, that's when I'm watching all of the tea. That's when I'm, like, sitting on TikTok, scrolling and listening to people's stories and taking in more of, like almost more like you're watching TV versus very quickly trying to figure out what's going on during the day.
So how do you know what to lean into in your content? Do you lean into the like person on the go or do you lean into the person's like, I'm gonna sit down and like watch my TV?
Holistic. Like, do it all.
Do it all.
Do it all, and
Yeah.
that's a very scary phrase, but it's actually, like, you have the really interesting story that you're telling in longer form video content, and then you can turn that into, like you can templatize the way that you're breaking it down in stories so that people can read it as they're very quickly, like, going through their day or going to cook dinner and half paying attention, half not. Like, you wanna capture them in both ways, and it gives you I think it squeezes more of the juice out of the content, which sounds like more work, but it's not.
Totally agreed. I do a lot of the like really quick attention grabby stuff. Um Yeah, like, realistically, that's not gonna maybe convert as much, but it's gonna reach a lot more people because more people have shorter attention spans, and then the few that it does convert are, like, more willing to see my, like, stuff that requires, like, a deeper attention, and all of that kind of works together,
Yeah.
and doing the stuff that's, like, shorter attention span content will take me, like, a quarter of the time, so it's really about that balance that I think you're talking about that I totally agree with, and I never thought about it like that. I think that's such an interesting, really cool way to think about it, and it's totally how the algorithms work. People often say like, "Oh, the algorithms controlling me." It's like, no, you know what controls the algorithm? The people and their habits.
Yeah,
You have to study.
it's the consumer.
Yeah,
Because the consumer is everything. If like they are doing a very good job at listening to their customers and adjusting based on customer or like client behavior, and so we just need to do the same.
yeah. I mean, I feel like the other thing that's really interesting about building a business on social media is like almost becoming like too dependent or reliant on it.
Oh yeah.
So, like, do you feel any risk for your business being predominantly on social media? And like, where does the newsletter really come in?
Oh,
That
we love the newsletter. But no, I think it's really important to diversify the way that you're getting the word out there. And that's like at each stage of the funnel because if I mean, who knows? The platform could go down tomorrow. Like,
oh yeah, anything you
right, whatever, anything could happen and it does happen. And
it's happened to me.
right. And just like
And you obviously why I held back, but it has happened to me. I can't even tell you the panic attack. I thought my life was over.
I'm sure. Yeah, because it's very so dairy lot to have all of your eggs in one basket. And so, I mean, if you're looking, like, even think about anything in life that way. Like, there has to be balance. Otherwise, like, if you're putting too many eggs into one basket, the risk is not the fun, interesting risk that leads to new things that we were talking about earlier, but like the risk of things coming crashing down is much too high.
Totally, you gotta diversify, whether it's like your financial portfolio, your business, and how you acquire customers. All of that is like so relevant, so true. Yeah, and I think the fact that you also own your audience on your newsletter, it de-risks the situation that you're predominant on Instagram or TikTok or something. Because let's say they ban you tomorrow, or like the app completely shuts down one day. Well, you've nurtured your customers on your newsletter, and so you can reach them.
Yeah.
Which I think is very powerful. And I don't think enough businesses do that.
Well, I also think going one step further and connecting with people in real life is even more powerful. And I mean, the name I have this friend, like it's inherently viral not in the sense of like social media virality, but more in the sense of like you're sitting at a dinner party and you're talking about this because it comes up virality, like facilitating moments for that to happen so that even if like technology dropped off the face of the planet, which I mean, knock on wood, I don't think it's going to, but that you'd still be able to have that network and facilitate those connections in a way that is quite literally organic.
Yeah, I'm really obsessed with your name because when you hear what your business does, the name is super obvious. But then if you hear it randomly without context, I feel like it elicits this like curiosity of like, well, what could that be? It could be anything.
Yeah.
So I like that a lot. And I feel like people should consider their brands. Like, how do you make something that when you hear it, it's obvious, but then elicits that curiosity to learn more? I feel like some names of companies are so on the nose of what it does. Why would you want to learn more? You know exactly what it does when today. And then you're not going to like actually maybe seek out what it does and then maybe even like book or buy or whatever.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
Yeah.
I also love and obsess that your co-founder is like your bestie for childhood. I'm curious about that dynamic between friendship and business and like how did that dynamic change when you went from like friends to like business partners?
Oh yeah. So Ingrid and I met in the 7th grade. We became co-founders in the 7th grade. No, we actually joked that our first working relationship was when we were editors of the yearbook our senior year of high school together.
Wait, that's wait, I have to pause. That's so legit and real because you never want to start a company with someone you haven't collaborated on some capacity. And it doesn't have to be massive. It can be something like a school project. And I would even argue the yearbooks, like at that point in our lives, that was huge.
Our yearbook was so intense. We went to yearbook camp.
No, I'm so good. But it's true. At that point in your life when you're a kid, like it's actually like a very legit and a very like a lot of pressure. Yeah, execution, and you really actually learn how you work together.
Yeah.
That's also real.
So yeah, we did that together and we actually still very much use, I mean, we were talking about the newsletter, still very much use all of those skills that we learned then today, but like in design and in copy and everything. But we can talk more about the yearbook later. We went our separate ways for college. Ingrid went to Penn, I went to Michigan, and then had pretty different early careers. I mentioned I went to Meta. Um, Ingrid was working in hospitality. She got the coolest first job ever. Um, Union Square Hospitality Group did the founder is Danny Meyer, who's the founder of Shake Shack, and Ingrid was Danny's assistant right out of college. So she was
Unbelievable.
oh my gosh, it was the
Clearly, you guys are like some insane match going on here.
oh yeah, it works. And so she was working in hospitality, did so many more cool things than I can even list in this time right now. And when COVID hit, her career totally changed because the hospitality world came to its knees. And so she ended up getting into working for an organization that supported scale up stage startups in emerging markets. And that kind of put her into the tech world. I was in the tech world. I called her with this idea. I was like, I have been noticing this pattern and we have to connect our friends and build this bridge. And we got to the point where we were like, yes, let's do this. Like, we are so passionate about this. We're both connectors. I think this is right. Let's figure it out. And it became a project. It started as like, let's see if this has any legs and can have traction. And it actually started as a newsletter where we would connect people over iMessage if they saw the newsletter and they wanted to reach out. And at that point, when like people started requesting connections to the talent that we were featuring in our newsletter, we looked at each other and we were like, okay, we're doing this. We had been talking to this accelerator program, and we are like, if we are going to be founders, and we have a big friend group, it's 8 of us, and I think it's 8 of us. And we were like, we will not, if this doesn't go well, we're not only blowing up our own lives, we are blowing up all of our best friends' lives. So it's not an option for this not to go well. And we need to set the strongest foundation possible to make it work. And so we were super intentional about the way that we started our working relationship when we transitioned it from a friendship. And we essentially wrote a constitution for each other. We listed out by name the people that were on limits for us. We talk about it like co-parenting. So there's like the baby is the company, and then Ingrid is my co-parent. And so there were the people that were off limits because they were mutual friends for us to talk about the co-parent with, like if we were arguing or whatever it was. And then there were the people that were on limits, where if we're bothering each other because we spend every waking hour together, it's okay to go to this list of people that Ingrid has said she feels comfortable with and I have said I feel comfortable with to air our grievances. And it allowed for so much security and such an open line of communication between the two of us that we were like, okay, we feel comfortable with this. This is great. Let's figure out a way to make sure that it doesn't fall off week over week. And so we started doing we call it Wednesday check-in, but it's a how are you doing check. And we have it framed so that we can also give each other feedback. It's like a forced feedback function every week. We say the first is what's something I'm grateful for. The second is what's something non-operationally that's stressing me out. What's going on in my life, friend to friend, that's like coming and seeping into the workplace. And then what's stressing me out operationally? Like, what are the things this week at work that are really getting in my head? And then the last is what is something that you can do to make me and the business better? And that's where it's the forced feedback of like, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, either give me feedback or give me more support or pay more attention to this thing to make me and the business better. And through doing that, our relationship has gotten so strong, and it already was, but in a co-founder capacity in addition to a best friend capacity.
That's so epic. Maybe you can give me some advice because I've recently started working with my best friend on more business related things, which I haven't really told my audience about yet. But what has nature that there's like something big brewing. And one thing that we struggle with is we're so passionate about what we're building together. We're so excited and we're loving it. We forget that we're like best friends. We need to catch up each other's lives that are outside of work.
Yeah.
And we'll constantly be like, oh my God, we have so much to catch up outside of work. And then we'll like book the time to do it. And then we'll like be so excited about the work we're doing. We're like top of business. And I don't feel like I'm less close to her if we was talking about this, but it's like I still want to like be my best friend's best friend and be there for her outside of the business. So like, how do you schedule with like non-business work stuff in the friendship dynamic?
So I think the Wednesday check-in is really helpful for that because it starts with like, what am I grateful for and what is stressing me out in my life that has nothing to do with work. And like the non-operational things stressing me out are we just list all of the things that are going on in our lives, and inherently through that it's like catching up on the phone with a friend. And so you talk about the positive things, you talk about the negative things, you talk about how you can help each other and give each other advice, and making space for that, like, because I'm sure you're both I mean, I know you're very productive and you're constantly thinking of ways to make your business better, but having an enforced time to just be friends and to turn it off and to support each other in your personal lives takes like the pressure cooker off of when you're wanting to focus on the business, and you can be more creative that way.
Yeah, I love it. Like, sounds grand, but like scheduling the friendship updates, it's so critical. Yeah, actually running a business with this person. And obviously, when we're running a business person who's not similarly passionate about it. So naturally, that's going to be something that's going to take up tons of headspace that wasn't happening before.
Totally.
Well, the other thing that you mentioned that I like can't get on my head is that you're a California girl.
Yes.
And you did a time in New York. That's like my entire life story too. So super bonded on that. What is the differences you think when it comes to building a business between LA and New York? And like, what do you think is specifically better for your business that you're building?
So what I didn't mention about working with my best friend is that I live in LA and she lives in New York.
Oh my God. So we're by coastal. Wait, what is that dynamic like?
It's honestly fantastic because she's very much on a New York schedule. Like, she wakes up later than I do, she stays up later than I do. She goes into the office, like, I'm working from home. I'm starting really early in the morning, which is perfect for New York hours. I'm tired earlier. That's like we end around the same time. And so it works really well. And it also, I mean, our two markets, like the two geos that we're launched in so far in person, are New York and LA. So having hands in each of those places to really facilitate those real life moments that I was talking about, because so much of our business is centered around people getting together. Having her there and having me here, or in California, is really helpful. And we spend so much time together too. Like, she's in LA right now. I go to New York in a few weeks. We go back and forth all the time. Rolling at what company.
It's probably just like you're gonna do it anyways for your business, and then you're connecting off that. No, that makes a lot of sense.
Totally.
What city is better for your business? Like, what's more lucrative? What has like makes your business more money?
Yeah. I right now it's New York. It changes. And I think like that is because we are a horizontal marketplace. We have different types of services. And so seasonally, people are using different things. Like over the summer, a lot of people wanted to have dinner parties on a rooftop in Brooklyn or on the beach in the Hamptons, and they were hiring tons of private chefs. And meanwhile, in California, like, the winter is a wonderful time to have an outdoor dinner party too. And so and it's not just chefs, there's photographers, there's florists, there's stylists, there's interior designers. So actually 60% of our services happen virtually. Like, there are the ones that have to be in person and the ones that can happen virtually. And so things that are happening across the country, we tested out going internationally, and that will happen eventually. There are just more complications and like payments and payment processing and all of that. But in this moment today, New York is having a better model.
I love
So LA, pick it up.
that. I love that. No, thank you so much for sharing all of this insight. I feel like a lot of the times when you talk to entrepreneurs who are like running these like super successful businesses, they're not really going to get real with you and like what it's actually like. So I appreciate that you're so
Always happy to get real with you.
I don't try to run this back. Listeners, so much, but that's happening.
So thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. I will come back to chat with you anytime. I'm so excited about Gen Shi. We have to do like an I have this friend Gen Shi event or something.
Done. That'd be so fun.
Okay, are you ready? Mirror first.